Good evening, everyone. The December 18th, 2024 Arlington County Board of Zoning Appeals is now in session. I am Richard Kaplan, Chair of the Board of Zoning Appeals. The board is made up of 5 citizens appointed by the Circuit Court. Tonight, in addition to myself, we have members Intamalis, Portia Clark, and Carol McCroskey. Joining us virtually is Judy Freshman. To avoid disruptions, we ask that you please place your mobile devices in silent mode. Before we begin tonight's hearing, I will discuss this board's powers and procedures for tonight's hearing. The board's powers are prescribed in the Code of Virginia and are set out in further detail in the county's zoning ordinance adopted by the county board. The Board of Zoning Appeals does not have the power to rezone property or to amend the regulations set forth in the ordinance. That authority rests solely with the county board. This board does have the authority to do 3 things. First, the BZA can approve use permits that allow modifications of placement requirements for structures on 1 and 2 family lots where there is no option in the zoning ordinance to allow such modifications. In order to approve a use permit, the Arlington zoning ordinance requires that this board find that the proposal will not adversely affect the health or safety of persons residing in the neighborhood, will not be detrimental to the public welfare or injurious to property or improvements in the neighborhood, and will not be in conflict with the purposes of the master plans and land use and zoning related policies of the county. In making these findings, the BZA shall consider whether the modification will promote compatibility of the development with the surrounding neighborhood because of the structure's overall size, footprint, and placement are similar to those of the structures on the properties surrounding the lot in question, and whether the modification will help preserve natural landform, historical features, and/or significant trees and foliage. When approving use permits, the Board of Zoning Appeals may impose conditions that it deems necessary and in the public interest, including but not limited to the duration of the use permit. Second, the BZA can grant variances from the specific requirements of the zoning ordinance. When granting a variance, the burden of proof is on the applicant to prove by a preponderance of the evidence that the strict application of the ordinance would unreasonably restrict the utilization of the property, and the need for a variance would not be shared generally by other properties, and such variance is not contrary to the purposes of the ordinance. Or, the strict application of the ordinance would unreasonably restrict the utilization of the property, or that granting the variance would alleviate a hardship due to a physical condition relating to the property or the improvements thereon at the time of the effective date of the ordinance, or alleviate a hardship by granting a reasonable modification to a property or improvement thereon requested by or on behalf of a person with a disability. In all variance cases, the property for which the variance is being requested was acquired in good faith, and any hardship was not created by the applicant. That the variance granted will not be of substantial detriment to adjacent properties and nearby properties in the proximity of the geographic area, that the condition or situation of the property concerned is not of so general or reoccurring in nature as to make reasonably practical the adoption of an amendment to the ordinance, that granting the variance will not result in a use that is not otherwise permitted on the property or change the zoning classification of the property, and that the relief or remedy obtained through the variance is not available through a special exception process as provided for under the zoning or subdivision ordinance. Third, the BZA shall hear and decide appeals of the zoning administrator from any order, requirement, decision, or determination made by any other administrative officer in the administration or enforcement of the zoning code. Now on to tonight's hybrid hearing. For those who are participating in person, on the front of the table, you will find a QR code linking to a copy of the application package, including the staff report for each case before us this evening. For those participating virtually, a copy of each application package can be found on the Arlington County BZA website. There is also a link in the chat for the application packages. I recommend that if you have not yet seen the report for your case, that you review that report before your case is called. If you are attending virtually and lose connectivity, please reconnect with us by phone. If you are attending via Teams, please keep yourself muted and cameras off until called upon. Turn off the sound on any other devices around you to minimize interference. When called upon to speak, please turn on your camera and unmute yourself by clicking on the microphone icon that is located in the meeting command bar. County staff does not have the ability to unmute you. The meeting chat is active for technical support assistance only. The meeting chat should not be used for discussion, public comment, questions about agenda items, or requests for more information. All public comments must be shared verbally or have been previously provided in writing for the record during the assigned public testimony period. This evening, staff will call each case and will provide a brief staff report and recommendation. Next, board members will ask any questions of staff that they may have. Applicant or their representative will be given an opportunity to make comments to support the application or appeal. Next, all speakers for the item will be called. Speakers must fill out a speaker slip online or is available on the table in the front of the room. After we hear from speakers for and against the proposal, the board may permit the applicant a brief opportunity to clarify any points. The board may ask questions of any speakers, but does not permit any cross-examination or direct questioning by others. For tonight's hearing, this board has deemed the following time limits for speakers to be sufficient: 20 minutes for applicants of appeals, 5 minutes for applicants of use permits and variances, and 3 minutes for representatives of organizations, and 2 minutes for individuals as sufficient. After the board has gathered all the information we need and have discussed the case, we will decide the matter by voting on a motion duly made and seconded. A majority is needed to approve any motion. Please be respectful of the time allotted. This is a public forum, and tonight's meeting will be recorded and posted on the county's website. All information with tonight's hearing, whether spoken or written, is subject to the Freedom of Information Act requirements. Any appeal from the decision of this board must be made to the circuit court in accordance with state law. After your case of interest is heard, you are welcome to stay for the balance of the session or leave at your convenience. Before we get on with the first case, we have a bunch of administrative matters to attend to. Tonight, as I mentioned earlier, I have a request from a BZA member to participate virtually. Virginia law requires that there is an in-person quorum to allow virtual participation, and as such, I will note that we do have an in-person quorum for the record. Ms. Freshman has requested to participate virtually because she is ill. Ms. Freshman, can you please certify that you can hear me?
Yes, I can.
Thank you. And I will certify for those of us in the room can hear you as well. Second item to work through is that we need to adopt our 2025 calendar. I have distributed the calendar in advance and in paper copies to those of us who are in the room so that we can all work off of the same calendar. The only item that I have not worked on this calendar is if we wish to take a recess this year.
Mr. Chairman,
Ms. Malice.
for the August date that's currently on the proposed calendar, I would not be able to meet on August the 20th because of vacation.
Okay. Do our other colleagues have any opinions on whether we should recess? I know in the past, since I've been a member, we have recessed in August and not had a meeting, but then that's also increased our caseload in September. So I will just throw that out there. If we want to, just scratch off, as Ms. Malice can't attend in August, we can just either scratch that off, we could reschedule it, or we could pick a different month to recess.
Or if I could do the first week in August, but that would be it.
I can do a meeting in August, but I'm also happy to take a recess. I think that wouldn't be a bad idea. And with the status of the missing middle case, our caseload has been lightened a little bit, and so it doesn't present as big of a problem as it did last year for the case pileup.
Ms. Freshman, do you have any thoughts?
No, I will go either way, whatever the majority believes.
Yeah, I'm so.
Mr. Chairman,
Ms. Malice.
if there are no other comments and no other conflicts with these dates, I would move the proposed calendar except omitting an August meeting.
I'll second.
A motion made by Ms. Malice for approval of the calendar without an August hearing, and seconded by Ms. McCroskey. Is there any further discussion? I will call the roll. Ms. Malice.
Aye.
Ms. Freshman.
Aye.
Ms. Clark.
Aye.
Ms. McCroskey.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Motion for the calendar adoption passes 5-0. Next up, we have a bunch of appeals to schedule. So first, I would like to seek unanimous consent from my colleagues to schedule ZAPP 24-00022 for our January 22nd, 2025 hearing. This application has been deemed complete by staff and its application fee has been paid.
Seeking
Unanimous consent.
objection.
Yes, and having no objections, it shall be adopted. Second, I would like to seek unanimous consent to schedule appeal ZAPP 24-00021 for our February 19th hearing date. This application is similarly has been deemed complete by staff and that application fee has also been paid. Is there any objection?
No objection.
Hearing no objection, it is adopted. Lastly, for the third appeal, we have an appeal that is been filed on September 19th, in which its appeal fee has not yet been paid. So I would like to seek unanimous consent from my colleagues to schedule ZAPP 24-000-14 for a dismissal for non-payment of fees hearing for our January 15th, 2025 hearing as well.
It's the 22nd.
Did I get that wrong?
I think we changed it.
We changed it. Well, yes, and I got it right on the first case. Okay, for our January 22nd, sorry, thank you, Ms. Mellis, 2025 hearing, as the appeal was filed on 9/19 and it is still outstanding. Presumably, if that appellant pays that fee, then we would not have a need for that hearing, and then we would schedule that at our January hearing. Is there any objection to that?
No objection.
And that third item will also be scheduled. And Ms. Ryan, can you make sure that that appellant is aware that that has been scheduled for a dismissal hearing?
Yes, I can do that.
Thank you. One more item. Lastly, I would like to seek unanimous consent from my colleagues to appoint Ms. Ryan as the acting BZA secretary while our current secretary, Mr. Bowen, is unavailable for BZA business. And this would just be a temporary acting role until Mr. Bowen returns.
Was that a motion?
It was unanimous consent.
Unanimous. No
And
objection.
hearing no objection, congratulations, Ms. Ryan. Do any of my colleagues have any further business to attend before we call our first case? Okay, Ms. Ryan, can you please call the first case?
Yes, case number V-11986-24-UP-1, a carryover and revised, a use permit request by Lance and Jamie Hill Smith, the owners, to permit a left side setback of 3 feet to the building wall and rear deck, 2 feet to the building eave instead of 10 feet to the building wall, 6 feet to the rear deck and building eave as required, and to permit a right side setback of 5 feet to the building wall and rear deck, 4 feet to the building eave instead of 10 feet to the building wall, 6 feet to the deck and eave as required, and to permit a total aggregate side yard width of 8 feet instead of 15 feet as required regarding a one-family detached dwelling in the R27 zoning district on the premises known as 846 North Burlington Street in the Bluemont Civics Association. We have received supplemental material for this for a neighborhood outreach letter.
Thank you, Ms. Ryan. My recollection is that at a previous hearing, we approved a variance for this case, but I think both this board and the applicant were not ready to approve the use permit. Do my colleagues have any questions for staff on this application? No, let's hear from the applicant.
Okay, good to see you all again. Thank you for your time. As you might remember, we're the family whose house at 846 North Burlington Street was blown up by our neighbor, the late James Yu. Since we last met, we've received approval of our plans from George Dodge, who is the administrator of the Yu estate. I remember that was a big sticking point with our last meeting. We also adjusted the distance from the south wall, as was mentioned, to the property line from 2 feet to 3 feet per advisement from Tom Harrison from Arlington County Building Plan Review. That adjustment makes our setback plan in compliance with table R302.1 from Arlington Code for fire resistant windows, taking up less than 25% of wall space on the side that is between 3 and 5 feet from the property line. This adjustment also subsequently changed the width of the property from 18 to 17 feet, which is the width of a typical duplex in Arlington. And we do not plan to deviate from the plans that you see today. Thank you.
Thank you. Do my colleagues have any questions for the applicant? Ms. McCroskey?
I'll just make a comment, and I think I reflected the same approach before, which is that this is a situation that creates a lot of sympathy, and I'm very sorry, but I cannot in good conscience vote to put a single family dwelling on a lot that was never supposed to be for anything but the size of a semi-detached residence. And so I'm not going to be able to support this, but I do understand that a variance was approved last time and this may be approved, but that's my position.
Thank you, Ms. McCroskey. Anything further from my colleagues, or would someone like to try a motion?
Mr. Chairman,
Mrs. Malice?
find it. In case V-11986-24-UP-1, I move that the Board of Zoning Appeals grant the use permit with conditions in the staff report.
Second.
A motion made by Ms. Freshman and seconded by, by Ms. Malice and seconded by Ms. Freshman for approval as advertised. Are there any further comments?
Mr. Chairman,
Ms. Malice?
I'm sympathetic with what Ms. McCroskey says. This is a very unusual situation, but I think in this case, the applicant has, as the variance has been granted, because of a particularly unique hardship, I think the use permit should be approved. I think our objection at the last meeting was the fact that the drawings were indefinite and not necessarily what the applicant intended to do. Now that that's been corrected, I feel like they have satisfied the concerns that I had.
Thank you, Ms. Malice. I would also just, I would like to mirror Ms. Malice's comments. For whatever it's worth, I would like to just add that, you know, I am willing to approve this one, but for whatever, for the record and for whatever it's worth for staff, that I, you know, do not want to see this one as a precedent for, you know, other similar asks for setback relief or for even the nature of what is being built, because I think this is a fairly unique circumstance that could render this lot unbuildable for the foreseeable future if this board doesn't take an action. So I don't know if that has any you know effect, but if, you know, or if you know a home in the neighborhood is seeking setback relief, perhaps there can be an asterisk on this as a comparable for future BZAs. But I don't think that we can do anything binding in that regards. So that being said, I will call the roll. Ms. Malice?
Aye.
Ms. Freshman?
Aye.
Ms. Clark?
Aye.
Ms. McCroskey?
No.
Chair votes aye. Motion to pass this use permit as advertised passes 4-1. Thank you. Good luck.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Ms. Ryan, can you call the next case, please?
Yes, case number V-12003-24-UP-2, a use permit request by Ranwa Norai on behalf of Stephanie and Brandon Marcorell, the owners, to permit a right side setback of 9 feet to the proposed porch, 9 feet to the deck, and 7.8 feet to the porch eaves instead of 25 feet to the porch, 21 feet to the deck and porch eaves as required regarding a new rear porch and deck addition to an existing one-family detached dwelling on a pipe sim lot in the R10 zoning district on the premises known as 2800 North Yucatan Street in the Arlington East Falls Civic Association. Staff recommends that the board adopt the attached proposed resolution granting the use permit request with conditions.
Thank you, Ms. Ryan. Do my colleagues have questions for Ms. McCroskey?
Ms. Ryan, I don't know if you did the staff report for this one, but as I read this one, it appears that a use permit is required, but that in effect, the practical effect of this is that the nonconformities that exist today will be reduced. In other words, the I believe by 1.2 feet. The setback will be increased by 1.2 feet with the new build, even though it was, and I don't need you to answer with respect to exact numbers, but I think it's, today, there's a porch that encroaches into the side yards, and a slightly smaller porch would encroach into the side yard after this project. Is that right?
So the existing building is 7.8 feet from the building wall to that property
Right.
line, and this is going to be further set at 9
Right.
feet.
So that nonconformity of encroaching to 7.8 is going to be reduced to encroaching only to 9 feet.
For the
Yeah.
screen porch.
Okay, thank you.
Anything further? Is the applicant with us? Online, perhaps?
Hi, I'm Brandon. I'm the homeowner. My wife is on the line as well.
Would you like to speak to your application?
I would invite Rockwell to speak to it if you have a more detailed question. But basically, there's an existing non-covered deck, as we talked about, as you were just talking about, and we're seeking to turn it into covered porch.
Thank you.
Can I just, I'm sorry, so it's non-covered today, and the one that encroaches less that you will build as part of the new project will be covered, is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for this applicant? Discussion or motion?
I would just comment that I think that because we are, essentially, we have an existing non-conforming situation, and this will, the change that we're seeing will reduce the level of nonconformity on this. I'm going to support it. I think it makes it more compatible with the zoning policies and with the neighborhood.
Thank you. I believe that this is barely a pipe stem lot, and so it's being held to the higher pipe stem setback requirements as well. When the neighboring, very similarly situated properties are not pipe stems because they have wider fronts. So, Ms. Clark,
If you want a
No.
motion.
please.
I move that the Board of Zoning Appeals approve the attached proposed, oh, it went away.
Almost.
I almost had it. Oh, you got it. Oh,
The number.
V-12003-24-UP-2.
This is the rest of it.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Second,
A motion by Ms. Clark, seconded by Ms. McCroskey for passage as advertised. Is there any further discussion? I will call the roll. Ms. Malice,
Aye.
Ms. Freshman,
aye.
Ms. Clark,
Aye.
Ms. McCroskey.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Motion for approval passes 5-0. Thank you. Ms. Ryan, can you call the next case, please?
Yes.
Like my-
Case number V-12004-24-VA-1, a variance request by Mark Freelander on behalf of the Equity Trust Company, Cust FBO Margaret Son IRA, the owner, to permit a street setback of 20.2 feet to the porch instead of 21 feet to the porch as required, to permit a right side setback of 8.2 feet to the porch and 8.8 feet to the building wall instead of 10 feet to the porch and building wall as required, to permit a rear setback of 13.7 feet to the building wall, 12.7 feet to the building eave, and 9 feet to the areaway instead of 25 feet to the building wall, 21 feet to the building eave and areaway as required, regarding an after-fact approval for a front porch, rear addition, and areaway to an existing semi-detached dwelling in the RA 615 zoning district on the premises known as 1653 North Colonial Terrace in North Roslyn. Staff recommends that the board adopt the attached proposed resolution denying the front, side, and rear setbacks, requesting the variance, but approving a modified rear setback with conditions. And then please note, we have additional speakers that have signed up to speak on this item.
And I believe we now have a third speaker. Is that why you handed? Okay. We have 3 speakers for this item. I suspect we have questions for staff. Would someone like to?
Mr. Chairman,
Ms. Malice?
how did this come to the attention of staff?
I'm going to see if Stephen can answer that since he helped write the report for this case.
Sure.
Good evening. My understanding is that there is a enforcement case that has been open on this property for a while, and that is how it came to the attention of staff.
And would you know how the enforcement case came about?
I don't know the specifics of how that case started now.
Okay, thank you.
And anything further for staff before we hear from the applicant? You'd like to speak to your application?
Yes, sir. Mr. Kaplan, members of the board, I am Mark Friedlander, and I am here. Next to me is Maggie's son, who is the actual owner. The best way to tell this story is from the pictures that we added in our application. Miss Son purchased this property. It's 82-year-old duplex. And as could be seen in Exhibit A, it's an old house. When she bought it, there was on the back of the house, on the second floor, an old outdoor porch, and that's shown in Exhibit B. It was her plan to take down the porch, which was sitting on an existing basement. And Exhibit C shows what she did. She hired a contractor, took down the porch, and as shown on Exhibit C, the siding is the part of a bedroom instead of a porch. The bricks underneath were the old bricks, and in this house, it appears that the original house, 82 years old, had been added to approximately 40 years ago with this porch and a walkout basement, all as shown. Well, we've seen the porch, but Exhibit D shows the back, and you can see the siding, which is for the bedroom, and underneath is the existing, we think, 40-year-old open basement. What happened was that when she hired the builder to do this, the builder did not go and get any permits. If he had done so, and she didn't know that he didn't, why, he would have been told by the zoning people what he had to do. So the porch was built without any permits, and that brought on the charge that was mentioned in the staff report.
I'm sorry, you said the porch was built without any permits?
I'm sorry, sir?
You said the porch was built without permits?
Well, we don't, as far as we know, sir, the porch was built 40 years ago. And
wood
according to
porch
the zoning
on Exhibit A, on Exhibit B.
According to the zoning administrator, when we went and asked for an opinion from the zoning administrator, we were told that there were no permits for building that porch or the basement that was underneath. And as shown on the architectural drawing that is part of this, we've color coded it so that it becomes very clear that you had the old original 82-year-old building, and then in the back, what we believe is the 40-year addition of the porch and the underground, the open basement. Apparently, none of that had been built with a permit because there were no records of it at all. As a matter of fact, it was our original belief that all of it was grandfathered, but the zoning administrator said, no, that's not true, and said we should apply for a variance,
Mr.
which is what brings us before this board.
The question.
I'm sorry, can we interrupt for a question?
Mr. Freelander, is there a porch, you're talking about a porch in back of the building as opposed to the front of the building?
Well, there's a porch in the front with an overhang, which is Exhibit A. But the porch I'm talking about was the wooden deck porch shown on Exhibit B, and that's in the back of the house.
And that's,
That building, that's been
Right.
taken away.
So
That's
the-
gone.
right.
The-
That's what preceded the bedroom that's
Yeah.
there today.
Right.
But apparently none of that was ever permitted. So the problem obviously is that we have this existing, and we need to have, we're asking for a variance for what has been built there. We think it's notable that if you look at Exhibit E, that's the back of the yard, and the backyard falls off to this escarpment down to the street. I mean, there's nobody back there. And that's obviously why somebody built a second floor porch, because there'd been a beautiful view back there. What problems we have, if we look at Exhibit A, we see the porch on the front of the house. And that porch encroaches in the setback in the front, and it encroaches a little bit over on the side. It's very old. Some people might say it's very ugly. Some might say it's historic, but it does violate the zoning ordinance. And so we ask for a variance to allow it to exist, the roof, I call it, or the roof of this porch, to allow it to continue to exist as it looks. And even though it encroaches into the front yard a little, and even less into the side yard. The other part of the application deals with the encroachment in the back, because we encroach into the 25-foot setback. And we're saying, well, we do, because that's where the 40-year-old supports were built when they built this basement, walkout basement with the porch on top of it. And so without changing any of the existing sides and back and front, we need to have and ask for a variance to allow this house to now be permitted. This building itself obviously has to be permitted, because now they have to go through and inspect all of the construction, which of course we'll do, but we cannot do it unless we have the proper zoning and a proper variance. And that is what now brings us before this board. And we might add that all of the neighbors are favorable to this. It actually improves the neighborhood. There is nobody that objects. As a matter of fact, the neighbors all have been talked to, except for the neighbor who is part of the duplex, because that neighbor is not here. They've just been renting it out. I would like to answer questions about this if I could. If I haven't made myself clear, I apologize. I know that it's hard to understand without good pictures to show how this sits, but it does not affect adversely anything in the neighborhood. It improves the neighborhood. It is not any different than the neighborhood. I call the board's attention to Exhibit E, which is the backyard. You can see that the neighbor to the right, this little shed is the back of my client's property, but right next to it is the property line, and the neighbor to that side has fences and other buildings there. This is not
the back.
going to adversely change or affect the quality of life in that neighborhood. And I think we meet the standards that Mr. Kaplan announced when he first began this hearing.
Can,
And so I would offer to answer questions or ask his son to answer any questions.
thank you. Can I direct your attention to Exhibit D, which is page 28? It's a picture of the rear building.
Which one, sir?
D.
E,
D.
D.
I see on the first floor, there are 3 2-by-somethings covering up a door, right? So there looks to be stairs missing. What is the plan for that? Because
She said to me, you can answer the
Yeah,
question.
there's no plan because.
you're just going to leave that boarded up?
No, we like, because that's the setback issue. We cannot build anything down because of setback issues.
So,
That does not allow me to have a stairs at this time.
so the plan would be to leave it. And I would think that maybe the architect may want this closed in with a window put there.
And any questions from my colleagues for this applicant?
Could I just ask again, and I think you said this at the beginning, Mr. Friedlander, I apologize, but when did your client acquire the property? When did they buy it?
It was 1922. I mean,
Was it
2020.
during the pandemic.
Okay,
It
so
was during the
during, so,
pandemic, and then that's also the time where the builder did not, everything was rushed. It was a rushed decision
okay.
on my part. I apologize.
Did your builder make changes to that front porch?
No, he changed the roof, I mean, the roof was falling apart, roof shingles. He changed the shingles. Yes.
Okay. All right.
Ms. Mellis?
So in our staff report, there's also a discussion about the parking pad that was also, I guess, built without a permit.
I have.
Let me address that. There is a drawing here, and here's what the problem was. The drawing that we have in our plat, it's the one with the color codes on it. Where the yellow is the driveway. But whoever had this house before had paved this area all the way back. And the zoning officials said, if that's all driveway, then you don't have the proper coverage. So we've solved the problem, and we thought that was satisfactory to everybody. There's fence built across there so that it's not a driveway. It's just part of her yard. So that the driveway is limited, physically limited by fences and a gate to what is marked in yellow. And I might point out that in this picture, the green is this front porch that sticks out, and the blue is the part that we believe is 40 years old, and the purple is what we believe to be 82 years old. But that was the problem with the driveway, and I don't believe there's a problem with it, and because we've cut down the size, and the problem would have been that we didn't have proper lot coverage, but we have solved that.
Thank you. Anything further, Ms. Mellis? Did you have anything else?
No, if somebody else wants to.
I had a
go,
question
can
for
go.
staff.
Go ahead.
Ms. Ryan, if directing your attention to the rear, if we assume that everything that this applicant said is accurate and that that rear addition was done sometime 40 plus years ago, and they wanted to do a 2-story addition over that foundation, would they have to come before us?
I think there would be some variables with kind of looking at that. There's something in Article 16 of building above existing walls that are like above grade. So there's some situations like that where maybe.
But I think that would have to and I could be totally wrong, but I think that would have to predate the zoning ordinance. The zoning ordinance is not predated by 40 years.
I can see if Stephen can chime in too, since he was helping out with the staff report.
Right, if my memory is correct on the zoning ordinance, it says non-conforming that predated the zoning ordinance, you could build over that foundation? Am I getting that totally wrong?
I believe it's just non-conforming, can
Okay,
build over.
I made that part up.
I think the portion that you're thinking of is a different part of Article 16, which deals with the ability to build a new house on a lot
Okay.
that predates the zoning ordinance.
So we suspect that if that original rear had been permitted, then they would be able to build over that by right? Or is
I
that
think
can you not answer that?
the determination would be whether it's first story or basement walls. The way that staff interprets the provisions in Article 16 that allow construction over non-conforming walls, it needs to be the first floor of a structure or higher. It doesn't allow applicants to remove a house down to a basement and build over basement walls.
So still, we would not qualify for that exemption, and we would still be before us here.
I believe so.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
If I might state, when we first began, it was a belief, certainly of our architect, that we had the right to do this without having to get any variances. But when we
Or a permit.
we couldn't do anything without a permit. I mean, we
Clear-
did.
well, clearly.
I mean, we needed the permit, but we're backwards because we have to have the variance before we're allowed to ask. And we will, of course, get a permit because we have a violation outstanding, which has been pending, that we were to do all the things that we're doing. The court said, this is what you've got to do, and we're doing it. And of course, we know that the next step is now go to the building department and say, tell us.
Thank you.
And this is what we'll do.
I believe we have 3 speakers. So let's hear from our first speaker, Miss, I apologize if I'm going to pronounce this right, Miss Hoy. Laura Hoy.
I think there's a LH online.
Mhm.
Laura H, yes. Are you with us, Ms. Hoy? Okay, well, we can try again. Let's move on to Mr. Klein. Is Mr. Klein with us? I'm sorry, Ms. Hoy, if you want to call in, we can't hear you if you're speaking. So if you want to try calling in and rejoin us, we'll circle back after our next couple of speakers. Mr. Klein.
Thank you. Good evening. I was hoping to speak after Ms. Hoy, a neighbor of ours, just to follow up some of her remarks, but I'll try to.
I'm sorry, can you tell us what your relationship to this property is?
My name is Keith Klein. I am a neighbor, and I recognize that.
Which
Address.
address or which? At which?
Oh, at 1610 North Colonial Terrace. So down the block
Down the block.
on Colonial Terrace, not right adjacent, but part of a neighborhood. If you're not familiar, this is a neighborhood. This is a street that has about 20 identical duplexes. And I would dispute what Mr. Friedlander said, that the additions and changes that have been made to 1653 are no different than the other duplexes on our block and around the corner there. That is not true. On our block, there are no duplexes that have a full-fledged porch, because a porch is not permitted. 1653 has a full-fledged porch. That is new and built within the last 2 years. There are no duplexes on our street, in our neighborhood, that have a 2-story addition that with no setback, which is true of 1653. In addition, there are no duplexes on our street that have fully, effectively turned their front yard into a parking lot. Effectively, I know there are paving blocks there, but they are used to put cars in the driveway and in what really is the yard, but it is used as a two-car front yard. As far as I know, there are also no houses on our street that have been built, where additions have been built with no permits. As far as I know, there are also no houses on our street that are being used as Airbnb. So all those things are different about this house, and therefore I come in speaking in support of staff recommendations to deny the application.
Thank you, sir. Ms. McCroskey. I'm sorry, Mr. Khan, quick question.
So did you say that the front porch was built within the last 2 years?
Yes, that's part of the additions, the changes that have been made by the current owner.
Okay, and that was when the roof was expanded out?
Roof was expanded and pillars put on, turning it into a real porch with a step up level.
Right, thank you.
Thank you. Is Ms. Klein? I'm sorry. You are Mr. Klein. I was looking at the wrong, I have a paper. Ms. Spiceman. Apologies. And Ms. Spiceman is at 1610 North Colonial Terrace.
Yes, good evening. Thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight. Thank you also for your service to Arlington through this difficult work. I'm here as a neighbor of 1653 North Colonial Terrace. I've lived in the neighborhood for over 25 years, first as a renter and later as a homeowner, striving throughout this time to responsibly support Arlington's civic processes through such activities as involvement with the North Roslyn Civic Association, participation with the rest in the Western Roslyn area plan study, planting native trees and rain garden on my lot, even though we don't get any credit for it because our lots are too small, and getting to know many renters and owners who are our neighbors. Some of us first contacted the county back in COVID times, so it was difficult to make contact, while the house was under construction, to report that it was being radically altered with no visible building permit and apparently improper setbacks. Since its completion, the exclusive use of the house as an Airbnb has been disruptive and unsightly, with overflowing garbage bins, rodents, and vehicles parked in the yard and front and side yards. In addition, the impermeable materials covering the lot are an eyesore. It completely detracts from the neighborhood, damages the aesthetics. It's very concerning to me when several months ago, the applicant, who I'd never seen before, knocked on my door, requesting my support for this after the fact variance. Several other neighbors have also expressed the same outrage that I felt. A person who mounted a concerted effort campaign to solicit support for variance after the fact, after overtly flouting the zoning process, can't plausibly claim ignorance of the most basic zoning and permitting requirements. I strongly urge the BZA to deny the variance request and to require the applicant to restore the property to meet all setback requirements and to go through the same permit process they should have used back in the first place to rebuild the back wall. This will provide a valuable lesson to the applicant and other scofflaws who believe it's easier to ask the BZA for forgiveness than permission. Any compromise here sends the wrong message.
Thank you. Any questions for this speaker? Thank you. And Ms. Mellis.
The first speaker.
Yes, I see that. Yes. Ms. Hoy, is it Hoy?
Yes, it is. I apologize for the technical difficulties that I got cut off when I started my camera. Good evening, and thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight. I am speaking today as a neighbor of the applicant on North Colonial Terrace. My family has lived in our home for 11 years. I am requesting that the board deny the requested variance, or at a minimum to support the staff's recommendation for denial of the requested setbacks, but an acceptance of the previous wall locations. I say this for two reasons. First, the applicant did not submit the variance request or even a building permit before they constructed their new front porch and rear addition. They had no interest or intent to follow the setbacks or permit and code requirements for their new addition. The applicant is asking for this variance only after the fact, once they have been caught. Second, the applicant is making Colonial Terrace less of the welcoming neighborhood than it was when we moved here, and we do not want the applicant or any others to feel like they can do this for their own financial benefit. They've constructed an imposing addition, and they have paved the entire front and side yards so that all anyone sees walking past is concrete and pavers, no grass or plants like there used to be. They're also using their home as an Airbnb, so we have short-term renters rather than families on our block. As a demonstration of the use of the house and front yard, between another neighbor and I, we have documented 14 occasions of different cars in the driveway at 1653 just since July from several different states. On 6 occasions, there was 1 car parked properly. On 3 occasions, there were 2 cars, with 1 car in the driveway and the other on the paved brick area in front of the porch. And on 5 remaining occasions, the car was parked angled across the entire driveway and patio area. While I would personally prefer that the applicant is required to add grass or plants to the front yard in addition to the setback changes, I understand that Arlington allows pavers, so I'm simply requesting that the applicant is required to install the fences that were discussed in staff's report. Once again, I'm requesting that the board deny the applicant or support staff's recommendation, as the applicant is not being a good neighbor and does not deserve for Arlington to allow them to take away the warmth and personality of our neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any questions for this speaker? No. Okay. Thank you very much. Discussion with the board.
Oh,
Ms. McCroskey.
yeah, I'd just like to take this back sort of to the standards that we have to apply in the code. We can approve a variance when when the strict application of the ordinance would unreasonably restrict the utilization of the property, or the granting of the variance would alleviate a hardship due to a physical condition relating to the property. And I think the problem that I have here with this variance is that I don't think there's an unreasonable restriction on the property that we have seen. Unfortunately, maybe it was an unscrupulous builder who built the project and didn't get the permits, which they should have done, and they would have learned at that time. But I just don't think there's a restriction. I think that this is also a problem that could be fixed by an ordinance amendment of general application that applied to all properties. And so I think that this does not meet the standards for variance that exist in the code today.
Thank you, Ms. McCroskey. Ms.
I
Clark.
got a question to follow up. There was a statement that a permit was never issued for the addition, but in the documentation, there's a permit never approved. Was that something recently that staff may have explored, or were there ever any permits issued in the last 2 years?
While Ms. Ryan is looking at that, my memory on reading the application is that this applicant tried to retroactively get a permit, and then that permit was not approved and sent here.
Okay.
Any further comment before
Miss,
Ms. Malice?
yeah, I agree with Ms. McCroskey that the standards for a variance have not been met. And I think that we'll just have to leave it at that. The fact that it's currently being used as an Airbnb doesn't really enter into our decision. I am troubled that so much work was done without a building permit, and as staff had pointed out, some of this work was done since 1922. It was well after COVID. So that's not entirely a justification. So I'm willing to support the staff recommendation. I think we should discuss what to do with the rear building.
Yeah, and that was my comments were similar. I would just add that a lot of this not all of the hardship, but a lot of the hardship was created by this applicant after purchasing the property, which is a Virginia state requirement for us to find. So in addition to Ms. McCroskey's findings, that we can't make that finding either. So I think as a board, our hands are tied in this case. when we are getting to the motion, I think that there's something we have to correct in one of the whereas statements. But I'm also not sure what to do with the language that staff is recommending in setting it back to its original setbacks, because this board would typically want to see plans before, giving a blanket approval for setbacks. Right. So I don't know how we would even try to address that. Because I think Ms. Malice was probably getting there as well.
Yeah, when we say original setbacks, they were non-conforming? Or were they conforming?
Ms. Ryan, I was confused by this part of the partial approval that staff is recommending. Or was this Mr. Rissy who worked on this one?
Mr. Rissy wrote the report for this one. And just to add before, for the prior question, it does look like they subsequently after the enforcement, both ISD and zoning enforcement, they
Could you speak into the microphone?
Sorry. Subsequently after getting the zoning enforcement case and the ISD code enforcement case is when they applied for the building permit in June 2022.
Mr. Rissy, can you speak to the part of this partial approval?
Yes, the reason for the partial approval is the rear wall of the house, according to the plat, appears to be 23.9 feet from the rear property line, and so in a non-conforming location. And so we just wanted to make it abundantly clear that they have the ability to put the rear wall back into place and did not in fact need to remove the entire rear wall of the house and bring it to 25 feet.
But what about the basement wall that comes up above ground? Because it's clearly further out, but we don't know if that was ever approved.
I think we know it wasn't
From what we've
approved.
heard, right. Well, from what we heard, nobody found any evidence that
Right.
it was approved, and we don't know if when it was built, it was conforming or what the status of that is. Is that correct, Mr. Rizzi?
Correct.
Okay. So, but this, so this would, adopting this partial approval motion would still require them to take out the section of the basement that goes out to where the wall is. Because it encroaches, it's a rear setback to that wall of less than 23.9 feet.
Correct.
Ms. McCord, can you restate what you just, what
Yeah,
got the correct?
my concern is that if we adopted this partial approval resolution, we would leave them, they would be required to take down what they built over the basement foundation above where the deck used to
Right.
be. But they would also be required to reduce the size of the basement because it goes further
Goes
into
further. Right.
Yep.
That's right.
And that seems to me, I mean, I guess I'm sort of reacting to the fact that that's a brick wall and that it has existed for, I think the staff doesn't
We don't know.
dispute that probably existed for 40 years while it was under the deck, right?
We don't know how long the basement portion existed. In the staff report, I just noted the only photos of the basement that I was able to locate were photos from a listing, and I was unable to see any walkout basement.
Okay, but it didn't have, oh, we don't know how far back it went into the setback.
We know that the deck was there. We don't know how far the deck extended, and we don't know what was underneath it and when it was placed there.
Okay.
But the areaway was not there. That's new.
Correct. The areaway is new.
While we're thinking about that, can I also, I'm looking at the resolution in the resolved. The first one is that the structures are constructed in accordance with the footprint on the plat plans and architectural drawings. That's not what we're suggesting, is it?
In the recommended language, I believe the language says, except as amended by the BZA's approval.
I'm not seeing that.
I'm not, Ms. Malice, I'm not sure where you're looking, to be honest.
I'm on
This would
page,
be the bottom of page 10 and the very beginning of page 11, Ms. Mouse.
Ms. Malice, you might be looking at the alternative resolution for approval.
oh, I'm saying the second one. I see there's
Yeah.
two of them. I'm sorry. You're right. Okay.
While we're talking about the resolution, I think that we need to reword, let's see. The whereas, let's see, the 1, 2, 3, the fourth whereas the BZA finds that the property was acquired in good faith, but the hardship of removing the existing structures was not created by the applicants. I think that should
was-
just be, but the hardship was created by the applicants. I think there's two problems with that. Is one, the whereas says not created by the applicants, and two, it refers to the existing structures, whereas the hardship here was created by the applicant, not just the existing structures.
Mm-hmm.
But I think the bigger issue for us is how to deal with the rear.
Yeah, I think the difficulty we have is that we don't have good information on what was existing and what changes have been made. So it's difficult to sort of parse out what was there originally versus how it's been modified. Certainly, what was there originally, we could find that part of it could remain. You know, we're trying to guess what was changed, and I don't think we have the information to do that.
Well, and so I would assume that staff isn't going to be able to find that for us because in these discussions, I would assume, and maybe Mr. Rissy can confirm or not, that staff has already made an effort to figure that out. And we don't know. I mean, we don't have records that tell us about that. To me, the big area in question is when was the basement there and how big was it? So I don't know if you have any input on that, Mr. Rissy, but.
I don't have a clear answer for you. I can say we looked to see what we could find in our records, and we weren't able to find any old plats that showed the basement extension or the rear deck of the property prior to its current configuration.
So I will just offer to my colleagues a possibility. I would tend to want to take staff's recommendation, but I would also want to approve a setback of 13.9 feet, which I believe is the distance to the back brick wall of the basement, but only to the level of the basement, the top of the brick that is existing today. And that would create a potential setback area where they could have a deck, and it looks like it would more go back to what it was previously, with the understanding that we don't know if that was ever allowed really or not. And I put that out there for others to react to, because if we don't want to go there, we don't need to worry about crafting a motion.
Does staff have an opinion on that?
I'll go ahead and take that one, I guess.
You know, that's a loaded question. I get it.
Yeah,
And
I
you
think
get
it's-
fun. Totally, right?
it's certainly within your purview to make that finding, I'll say. But
Thank you.
again, we don't have anything to show when that basement or deck was created or where exactly they were on the property previously.
And that, the picture we have that is applicant Exhibit B, my recollection is that was from the MLS listing when they purchased this house in early 2020s. Is that correct?
Exhibit B was provided by the applicants, though I did see similar photos to that when I saw listing photos online, yes.
Yeah, I mean, I think you, no, you don't have one in your report. Okay.
And nothing showed what was under that wooden deck. Is that correct?
I couldn't find any photos that showed what was under the deck.
Ms. McCroskey, if we were to do that, I think we would also need to craft a restriction on not being built over.
Yes.
Right.
Yes. Yes. And I kind of looked at this picture and thought, well, that was sitting on the brick basement, but I guess we have no way of determining
way to
whether it
know,
was.
right.
It could have been empty underneath with wooden supports.
I wish we had a picture from the side.
Mhm.
So, Ms. McCroskey, is it 13.7, the number that you're thinking? I'm looking at the plat here. I'm trying to follow along.
That one with all the different colors.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe it is 13.7.
So
I think that's right.
Yes, it is. I'm sorry. I said 0.9.
I just want to make sure I
Right.
was looking at the same thing.
Yeah.
So we're saying, and when you said they could build over a deck, what were you talking about? Building over a deck over?
Well, it just struck me as odd to have that piece of basement jutting out. And it seems like that would be a natural use of that area, would be to put a flat deck on it.
Okay, so the area that's in blue, I guess.
Right.
Could have a deck,
A roof, either a sloped roof or
Right.
a deck would be the options, I
A
would
slope.
imagine.
but nothing to be built over the area way or beyond that.
Right. And I would assume that the area way would be removed if we approve just the 13.7. Yeah.
Yeah, it would
Can you
be
confirm
like-
what the area way is? I'm not sure what we're referring to.
The area ways the steps down into the basement.
Okay, thank you.
That would.
Right,
go
because that would
away.
not be approved.
That would
right,
not be
right.
approved.
Right. Which is not in the MLS picture, right? That's new.
That is new.
Mr. Chairman,
Ms. Freshman?
maybe it's just because I'm participating from afar, but I've sat in many meetings like this where the board struggled to try to make sense of an application, to try to reinvent parts of it. And what I hear is that can't happen in this case. I think, I would prefer that the variance be denied. And because I don't think any of the criteria have been met, and I don't think there's enough information based on the questions that you've asked and the fact that so much information is not available. So I suggest that we deny the variance and the applicant can begin again, knowing from this conversation what the various pieces of information seem to be lacking. And if they can come up with a different proposal to try to legitimize the property, so be it.
Thank you, Ms. Freshman.
And can I just say,
Freshman.
I think Ms. Freshman's suggestion is very sensible and makes a lot more sense than trying to fix something where we don't have that information, which I was trying to do. But I think that's exactly right. And that would mean we would be adopting staff's recommendation and today, and then the applicant could come back for something else if they wanted.
Well, I think,
We would be going beyond the staff's recommendation.
well, no, I think staff's recommendation is to the building wall, not the extended basement wall. At 20, 21.
At 21.
At the 23 point something, it wasn't it?
Got it.
I'm reading it
23.
now. I'm reading it now again.
I don't see staff.
No, staff's recommendation was to permit a rear setback at 13.7.
No. It denies the rear setbacks of 13.7 and 9 feet,
Oh,
but approves a rear
yes, thank
setback
you.
of 23.9.
I was reading the whereas, not the therefore.
Right.
Before we get on, I just wanted to echo Ms. McCroskey's statement in that this board almost always requires plans and plans for the project. And we would be deviating from that if we were to approve anything but without plans and elevations and everything. And I think that is not a precedent that this board should set, especially in this case when we should be pretty clear about what we are approving or not approving. So I'm going to agree with Ms. Freshman as well.
So do we need to modify the resolution in any case?
We do for the whereas that I was discussing before.
Right.
Where
Hardship was created by the applicants.
the hardship was created by the applicants. That's what I would leave it at.
Strike the not.
Right.
Where's the variance granting the variance? So that's kind of weird to put the granting in a negative that we put in will not be detrimental.
I'm not following.
So
what-
the next, there's a whereas, the next whereas is finds the granting of a variance would not be detrimental. I
Will
think
be detrimental.
it says will not here.
I think you're looking at the other one.
Really?
Whereas the BZA finds that the granting of the requested variance will be detrimental to the
Okay.
adjacent properties.
Got it.
Would someone like to make the motion?
Mr. Chairman,
Ms. Malice,
I move,
try and do the correct one though.
yeah, I move the Board of Zoning Appeals adopt the attached proposed resolution granting modified approval of the variance V-12004-24-VA-1, subject to the conditions listed with the change to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The third, whereas the hardship was created by the applicants. And that's it.
Second.
A motion by Ms. Malice with a alteration, seconded by Ms. McCroskey. Is there any further discussion? I will call the roll. Ms. Malice.
Aye.
Ms. Freshman.
Aye.
Ms. Clark.
Aye.
Ms. McCroskey.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Motion for modified denial passes 5-0. Ms. Ryan, can you call the next case, please? Ms. Ryan can facilitate that, which I believe is their normal process.
Okay, ready for the next case? Or-
Yes, please.
Okay.
Right,
Case-
your normal process is to provide applicants copies of the resolutions passed tonight,
Yes,
and as well as the video and audio recording will be posted online as well, right?
that's correct.
Thank you. Yes, next case, please.
Okay,
Sorry.
next case is V-12005-24-UP-1, a use permit request by RC Fields and Associates, Inc. on behalf of Carmine and Eunice Zarlinga, the owners, to permit a right side setback of 2.8 feet to the landing instead of 5 feet to the landing as required regarding an after-fact approval for a landing on a new one-family detached dwelling in the R10 zoning district on the premises known as 2545 North Ridgeview Road, Dover Crystal. Note there is supplemental material for this case, and staff recommends that the board adopt the attached proposed resolution granting the use permit request with conditions.
Thank you, Ms. Ryan. Any questions for staff on this application?
Ms. Ryan, what was the supplemental material on this case?
We received a neighborhood outreach letter.
Thank you.
Would you like to speak to your application?
I sure would. My name is Carmen Zarlinga. I am an owner of the property. That is the property in question. Can I ask a question, Ms. Ryan, is it? The supplemental material, is that the Paul Carruthers letter?
That's correct, yes.
Okay, so I would,
You may raise the podium if you wish.
oh, that would be
To
great.
to the right.
You're right. Yeah.
There you go.
It probably won't
I
get tall
wondered-
enough, but it'll help.
That's okay, it's good. I wondered why the mic was so low. I was like, that's a powerful mic. There is one more letter of support from a neighbor that came to me this morning. So there are multiple copies here. And I read the instructions and it said if there's something that comes in, I could just bring it. So there we are.
Could you please announce the address?
It is 2545 North
But-
Ridgeview Road.
But the address for this new approval is 2406 North Quebec Street.
Sorry, I didn't.
That's what you want. I don't know if that's what you'd want, but.
Yes, I just am not there to see whatever was handed out.
Right, right.
Okay. So, Ms. Freshman, sorry you're not feeling well. Hope you're feeling
Thank you.
better. That neighbor is not an adjacent neighbor. It is the neighbor to the rear and to the south, nearby, certainly, but not adjacent. May I proceed?
Yes, please.
So basically, I mean, I think the staff did an amazing job with the report. It's very thorough. The main concern I had was, would my neighbors be upset? So I made a concerted effort to contact all of them on my own and received unanimous support. A couple reasons for that that were articulated to me and that I also feel are the case is that it's really hard to see this condition, the way, just where it's located. It's kind of over a hill, so you can't see it from the street. And it's on the side of the house where the closest neighbor, which is 2539 Ridgeview, which is Robert and Christine Van Kirk, was the one I was most concerned about. And they're great neighbors and they supported the use permit. So that's the one I was most concerned about. They have also put up, I don't think because of this condition, just for their own privacy, arborvitae between our properties, and it just basically blocks the entire thing out. So nobody's complaining. Everybody's, in fact, everybody's supporting. And in terms of the letters of support, every single neighbor that joins my property is supportive. The neighbors across the street are supportive, and the neighbors in the rear are supportive. So I don't know if you have any questions, but it was no fault of mine that this was placed there. It was the builder and perhaps their architect that just didn't get the plan quite right. It would be a lot to tear this down. It would be very disruptive. Even though it looks kind of minimalist, it's steel and concrete. I think it would be quite a lot of work and quite a lot of expense to tear it down. So I would just ask that the staff recommendation be approved.
So when I read this, and we don't like these after the fact approvals, as you can understand. My main question is, why isn't this something that the builder needs to fix? I mean, it shouldn't be an expense to you, right? It should be the builder who would correct this problem because this was not part of, I mean, the plans, I would assume, were approved to have the right setback there.
I don't know the answer to that, but I mean, they were very scrupulous in getting permits and doing
Right.
all those things. And I know there was quite a few inspections of the property, and this came up very late. I can't say that, you know, it wasn't picked up earlier. I just don't know. But the builder representative, there's a builder representative virtually here. And there also is a representative of a land use company that submitted the statement of justification virtually here as well. So maybe they could chime in.
All right. I guess my question is really, how does it come about? Was this a builder error or was it a plan error, plan approval error? Do we know? Maybe we don't know.
Well, I could say that in the statement of justification. So I don't want to, you know, blame anybody or I feel the way you do, that if you don't grant the relief, that the builder is responsible, but I'd really rather not deal with that. Let's see if I can find the statement.
And if I may, I'm Taylor Doyle from the RC Fields and Associates, the civil engineer for the project. The proper setback was shown on the plan, the 5 foot, I think we showed 5.1 perhaps on the plan, which is the required setback. And from what we've heard from the builder who we prepared this statement of justification for in conjunction with Carmine, is that it was a fabrication issue. They ordered the stairs, they brought it on site, installed the concrete, and found out after the fact that the fabricator who created the stairs, because they come in, apologies, large pieces, fabricated it incorrectly, and it was after everything was already inlaid in the stairs that they discovered it was too large.
Thank you. I appreciate having the background.
Yeah, and that's in the statement of justification, December 4th, in the first paragraph.
Anything further for this applicant? Discussion or a motion?
I'm just looking for the motion. Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion.
Ms. Malice.
I move that the Board of Zoning Appeals adopt the attached proposed resolution granting use permit V-12005-24-UP-1, subject to the conditions listed.
Second.
A motion for approval as advertised by Ms. Malice, seconded by Ms. Freshman. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, I will call the roll. Ms. Malice.
Aye.
Ms. Freshman.
Aye.
Ms. Clark.
Aye.
Ms. McCroskey.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Motion for approval as advertised passes 5-0.
Thank you.
Enjoy your stairs.
Lovely property.
Your bigger stairs, right?
They're a little bigger than they're supposed to be. But I have size 14 feet, so it all works. Thank you very much.
Ms. Ryan, can you call the next case?
Yes, case number V-12006-24-UP-1, a use permit request by Skylar Aarons on behalf of Stephen Marjek and Carolyn Hughes, the owners, to permit a street setback of 17.1 feet to the porch, 16.1 feet to the porch eve instead of 21 feet to the porch, 19.5 feet to the porch eve as required, and to permit a street setback of 13.2 feet to the deck instead of 21 feet to the deck as required, all from North Emerson Street, regarding the reconstruction of an existing screen porch and deck to an existing one-family detached dwelling on a corner lot in the R6 zoning district on the premises known as 5101 25th Street North, Yorktown. Staff recommends that the board adopt the attached proposed resolution granting the use permit request with conditions.
Thank you, Ms. Ryan. Do my colleagues have questions for staff?
I just need some direction here. I see where there's the proposed porch. Which deck are we talking about in this request?
Miss Malice, it's labeled as the landing. Per zoning division definitions, we would look at it as a deck.
Oh, so it's the landing area right here.
Yes, it's
It's
labeled
not
as a
a
landing
deck.
on the plat.
Got it. Thank you.
I'm finding the picture so I can make sure I'm following along here.
Yeah, it's,
I had the same question when I was reading this.
yeah, because there is the deck in the back that is not relevant to this case, evident.
Okay. Can you bring up that pic? Can you put the picture on the screen for us? How about the plat? Let's identify it on the plat.
There it is.
Okay, it's circled. Gotcha. On yours, it's circled. On our,
Yeah, it's not circled. Did you
yeah,
just
I
circle
was
it?
just
You
thinking,
just circled
how
it.
did I miss the circle, right?
No, he just circled it.
Okay. You have any questions for staff on this? Okay. Is the applicant with us?
Yes, I'm here. Skylar Aarons.
Hi. Would you like to speak to this application?
Yes. I understand you folks read these in advance, so just adding a little bit to what you have already probably looked at. Obviously, there's already an existing porch there, an existing larger landing / deck there. It's been there probably 40, 50 years, they look like. And so they basically, this is kind of the last project I think they'll be able to do on this property, minus maybe a front porch they could probably do by right, but this is pretty much it. And one of the things I kind of recommended to them, they obviously wanted to rebuild something similar to what they had. And I said, well, you know, when you go to the BZA, you kind of want to compromise a little bit and make some adjustments here and there. And so I convinced the owner that we should probably just make the landing stop right around the edge of the house there versus where it was originally. I don't think the existing plat was there, but you can see in the existing architecturals, there was a deck that was a little bit larger that protruded out oddly into the yard. So we kind of reduced that proposal so it's not encroaching as much as it was originally. Other than that, like I said, this is probably the last project they can ever do on this property, minus like a front porch or something. And again, that would probably be by right. But other than that, I leave my time to you for any questions you may have.
Thank you. Yeah. Do my colleagues have any questions?
So just to clarify, this is the reconstruction of an existing screen porch and deck.
Yes.
And the setback from Emerson is actually less than it existing. Correct?
Correct. Yes.
Okay.
And
the
it's one of the tough conditions, you know, and again, it's one of those tough scenarios when you're on a corner lot, you have two front setbacks versus the typical front and two sides and rear. So that's really what's kind of hurting them the most is that secondary front setback there. But yes, they are improving the condition from what has currently existed.
And 20 years ago, how did it get built 20 years ago? Not that you would know, but it would have
that
been,
part I'm not sure. Yeah.
it would have been built in the setback 20 years ago, and that's certainly after the zoning ordinance.
Yeah, I don't know if it's 20 years old. I don't think it's from the 50s though. So you're right. It is definitely after the zoning ordinance. Yeah.
Yeah, it says that's when in the text here, I think from you or the applicant.
Gotcha.
That it was built 20 years ago. And
Would someone like to motion?
Mr. Chairman?
Ms. Malice.
I move that the Board of Zoning Appeals adopt the attached proposed resolution granting use permit V-112-006-24-UP-1, subject to the conditions listed.
I'll second.
A motion by Ms. Malice and seconded by Ms. Clark for approval as advertised. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, I will call the roll. Ms. Malice, Ms. Freshman,
Aye.
Ms. Clark,
Aye.
Ms. McCroskey.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Motion for approval passes 5-0. Thank you very much.
Awesome. Thank you to the board very much. Take care.
Happy holiday.
Ms.
Happy
Ryan,
holiday.
can you call the next case, please?
Next case is case number V-12007-24-UP-1, a use permit request by David and Rosa Cheney, the owners to permit a right side setback of 1.1 feet to the stairs instead of 5 feet to the stairs as required, and to permit a street setback of 0 feet to the stairs instead of 5 feet to the stairs as required regarding two new sets of steps above grade to an existing one-family detached dwelling in the R6 zoning district on the premises known as 834 South Monroe Street in Alcova Heights. Staff recommends that the board adopt the attached proposed resolution granting these permit requests with conditions.
Thank you, Ms. Ryan. Do we have supplemental for this case?
We do not.
What, I'm sorry, Ms. Ryan, what, what number is this?
This is,
Oh, 7. I'm on the
Yeah,
wrong
7.
case. I'm on the, I skipped this one. Sorry.
Monroe Street.
Yes, okay. I'm good. Any questions for staff on this application?
I have a question.
Ms. Malice?
Regarding the stairs as they move down towards the street, that's one of the setbacks that's being requested. I mean, it's very common to see stairs that abut the back of the sidewalk. Are those not appropriate? I mean, throughout Arlington, whenever there's grade, there's stairs. So I'm wondering why are these stairs different than what you see all over Arlington in my house, which just had work done and had a building permit and was approved?
Yeah, so I can answer that. So per the encroachment allowances for stairs, you can see in the last sentence on the first page of the staff report that stairs and steps that are less than 8 inches above finished grade can come all the way to the lot line. But working with our zoning plan review team, they determined that these stairs are greater than 8 inches above grade, so they would be subject to that 5 feet requirement.
Where's the finished grade in this situation? When it says 8 inches above finished grade.
I mean, I imagine finished grade would have to be the sidewalk, right? Because
There's no
stairs,
sidewalk here.
stairs don't, I mean, stairs don't go to nowhere, right? So
Right. So
finished grade has to be the lowest point. And there's no sidewalk here, right?
there's no, so I'm,
Well, sidewalks. Well,
there's no sidewalk. So where were we measuring?
I think our plan review team would typically look at the newly created
Could you
grade.
speak into the mic, please?
Yeah, I think the plan review team would look at the new grade or whatever. I don't think we have.
Oh, Miss Malice.
Yes.
Just to answer that one from
Okay.
plan review. So usually if you see those front steps, the left side has a grade where we can reference if the stairs are going to be on grade or more than 8 inches from the finished grade. The issue with this one is that the right side of that stairs is a retaining wall. If there would have been a stairs and then a grade and then a wall, then we can reference both sides of that, all of that stairs on grade. But since the right side is next to a retaining wall, it's basically going to be measured from the driveway up to that steps. That would make it more than 8 inches.
So
from
is
finished grade.
the riser more than 8 inches?
Yes, from like those steps
gravel?
from the drive.
From the gravel?
the drawing shows the rise for the stairs as 6 inches each. But I think what she's saying is that it's having the retaining wall there makes it measure from, I don't understand what you're measuring from still.
Yes, that picture is helpful.
Yeah, so I think in this case, it would be from the driveway.
So the top of the bottom stair is greater than 8 inches above the gravel on the right side of the retaining wall.
From like the side of the driveway, correct? It's above 8 inches.
Oh, if I
Ms.
could,
Malice,
sorry.
Yes.
it's not the bottom stair, it's all of the stairs. In that picture, you can see the stairs are in grade or less than 8 inches above grade on the left side because they are cut into the berm. But on the right side, the retaining wall separates them from the driveway, and the height of the retaining wall there from the bottom where the driveway is to the top of the stairs is more than 8 inches. So those stairs are more than 8 inches above grade.
The whole set
The
is
whole
more than-
set of stairs. Probably the first one isn't, as Ms. McCroskey pointed out, the rise is only 6 inches, so it's probably not until the second one that there's an issue. But yes, the whole set of stairs is what we consider to be here above, more than 8 inches above grade.
And that whole set of stairs is essentially moving forward a couple feet to be at the curb.
Brett, do you want to go to the plat? I think the sidewalk is kind of where right now is where the end of the property is.
I thought I looked at this.
Well, there is no sidewalk at the moment.
I didn't think there was a sidewalk here.
So the existing set of stairs are already 0 feet from the street setback.
Yeah, yeah, I thought they were replacing them in the same place, but it's one of these where when you replace it, you have to get the use permit to.
I'm looking, so if you look at the picture that Ms. Ryan had up previously, it looks like the stairs stop several feet from the curb. Now, that might not be the property line, because I'm not sure we have a true plat in this. We seem to have a hand-drawn plat, which is fairly unusual for us.
You don't have a certified, oh, yeah, that's.
We do,
Certified.
But,
yeah,
but it's hand drawn, I see.
and it,
Doesn't show the lot line.
it's got like 2 curbs on it, which is confusing to me here.
Where's the, it doesn't show a lot line. Do you see a lot line here?
I don't. Well, I don't know what that line is in the front, right? So I don't.
Looks like a property line, but.
It looks like the property line, and so like I guess my question for someone would be, do the current stairs end at the property line? Right, because the current stairs end, and then we have 3 paver blocks that go to the curb. So are we lessening that setback, or are we keeping it the same? And perhaps the applicant can shed some light.
I can.
Yeah.
Sorry.
I don't want to misspeak.
Go ahead.
Yes, the stair currently, the wood stair, the end of the stair is on the property line. The new stair will also be right at the property.
Same spot.
0 inches.
Okay.
Yes.
So is everything here in this project, including the retaining wall and the stairs, it's all replacement in kind of what's there today? I mean, with a different material?
Yes, different material. The only caveat I would say, the stair to the north, the narrow stair along the house itself has an extra few steps.
Okay.
To
Those are the
continue
ones
to
that go
grade.
down and then up?
Yes,
Okay.
right. Right now, there's a small little retaining wall. We're just putting those bottom steps in. Otherwise, it's replacing in kind.
Okay.
Sorry.
I think this is a lot easier, a lot, not easier, a lot simpler with that explanation.
Yes, yes.
So am I correct that you only have 2 neighbor support letters?
I have 3.
3. Okay.
The adjacent neighbor to the north,
T30.
who I've spoken to a lot about this project, and he's got his own set of projects that we share that lot line with a fence and other pieces, and then 2 across the street, directly across the street, and then adjacent to him across the street.
All right. What about your other neighbors?
The neighbor to the south, that neighbor has since moved and sold to a builder. The house has essentially been empty for 9 months. I can't get a hold of him. He's getting to renovate that house in his own permit. But so I've really only contacted the adjacent to the north, the two across the street, and got both approvals from them. And really the retaining wall and the stairs are really more of a continuation of what's really on the street. Because all the houses are up on the west side by 6 or 7 feet off of grade at street. So this stair retaining wall condition is pretty prevalent along that entire street.
It looks like your neighbor to the right is built right up to the property line. Is that,
Yes.
yeah?
Yep.
Someone like to,
Yes.
Ms. McCroskey?
I move that the Board of Zoning Appeals adopt the attached proposed resolution granting the use permit V-12007-24-UP-1, subject to the conditions listed.
Second.
A motion for approval as advertised by Ms. McCroskey, seconded by Ms. Malice. Is there any further discussion? I will call the roll. Ms. Malice?
Aye.
Ms. Freshman?
Aye.
Ms. Clark?
Aye.
Ms. McCroskey?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Motion passes 5-0.
Great. Thanks so much. Appreciate
Thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Ryan, can you, I think we're on number 7.
It's 12008.
8, yeah, item number 7 on the
Sure.
agenda. Yeah.
Case number V-12008-24-VA-2, a variance request by the Law Office of William B. Lawson, PC, on behalf of Elias and Lena Niemer, the owners, to permit a total main building footprint of 38.9% instead of 30% as permitted, and to permit a total lot coverage of 45.5% instead of 40% as permitted, regarding a new 2-story deck addition to an existing 1-family detached dwelling on a corner lot in the R6 zoning district on the premises known as 2255 South Kent Street in Arlington Ridge. Staff recommends that the board adopt the attached proposed resolution granting the variance. We do have supplemental material, a BZA comment form, and we do have an additional speaker that has signed up. And there is an associated use permit for this case.
So we have 2 speakers?
Yes.
There are a third. Okay, 2. Thank you. And can you describe the supplemental material?
It's a BZA comment form from the adjacent neighbor to the north.
Thank you. Do my colleagues have questions for staff on this application? Mr. Lawson?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm William B. Lawson Jr. I represent the applicant. Attached to my application, I had the case of Louisa County versus Valerie Holdings, and that was decided by Judge Ortiz. And if you all didn't read it, I would urge you to do so. It's pretty much a law review article on the state of variance law in Virginia. And I thought I would read from a couple of sentences that are in that opinion. And go ahead and I'll just go ahead and read through these. Here, the text of the statute combined with Supreme Court precedents makes clear that the legislature intended to expand the availability of variances. Now, the zoning ordinance need only unreasonably restrict the utilization of the property. The General Assembly intended a lower bar for property owners seeking a variance. Then Judge Ortiz talks about what is reasonable. And what he says is a restriction is reasonable if it is fair, proper, or moderate under the circumstances. In contrast, an unreasonable restriction is one not guided by reason, irrational, or capricious, unreasonable. The BZA shall, and Judge Ortiz made a kind of a big deal about shall versus may. says a BZA shall issue a variance if the effect of the zoning ordinance is to limit the use or enjoyment of the property in a way that is irrational, capricious, or not fair or sensible under the circumstances. And he then says the reasonableness and fairness thus include evaluating the unique circumstances of the property, the applicant, and the proposed deviation from the ordinance. The facts of that case were somewhat similar to the facts in this case. And Judge Ortiz upheld the lower court decision that he looked at the cost of bringing property into compliance with the zoning ordinance, and he said that that was an unreasonable amount. Here, we would have to expend quite a bit to allow Mr. Niemer to access the flat portion of his property adjacent to 23rd Street. He would have to create an area where he can go directly from the house out onto that piece of property. And eventually there'll probably be a ramp so that he can get his wheelchair up to the front door. And that will probably be too steep for him to do by himself. Now, as far as the merits of this case, I'm glad that we do have a recommendation of approval. I would respectfully submit that this is certainly a reasonable request. This is for a man who was in the service, served his country, and because of his medical situation will soon live his life in a wheelchair. When this house was built, coverage was 56%. So it's already non-conforming. And by adding the higher deck, he's only increasing the coverage by 2%, 161 square feet. And I wanted to point out that this is not impervious. This is coverage. And coverage is decks that are above, I think it's 8 inches. Now, there is a letter of opposition from Mr. Hughes, and he has a water issue. And I'm certainly very sympathetic to that because I had one when I lived at the foot of a hill at Ohio Street. And I am sympathetic, and I've written a condition. I'll hand this out as soon as I'm done, where we are offering, if the board should grant this and want to impose this condition, an erosion and sediment control plan to be approved by the county manager or his designee. And what's going to happen is they're going to put in 3 square foundations of 2 feet by 2 feet or whatever it is. And that's it. That's the only land disturbance that's going to take place. But given the steepness of the slope, I recognize that he doesn't want mud running downhill. And so that's why I think that's appropriate. That's my time.
Thank you, Mr. Lawson. Questions for this applicant? Go ahead.
So, Mr. Lawson, if you can listen while you're handing out the documents, what is the, I guess I'm concerned about what the hardship is that is created without this improvement, because there's already a deck on the house, right, that enables somebody to get outside. So why is it that what is the link between adding an upper deck and needing this and this, having the disability? It just doesn't, it seems as though the house already has everything that should be needed for the needs that are outlined for us to get outside and on this area.
There's a picture. It's called the left corner view. The existing decks are downstairs, and the deck that we're proposing, he'll be able to remove a large window and put a door, and he can go straight out. So the reason we want this higher deck is It's on the living floor. It's not downstairs. Both of the decks that it currently exist, he won't be able to go downstairs.
But it, from the picture on Exhibit 4, it looks like there is a ramp or a walkway that gets to that existing deck from outside.
I'm sorry, I didn't catch that.
On Exhibit 3, it looks like there's an existing ramp or walkway that gets to that existing deck from outside.
Well, there is, but it's significantly downhill.
But there's also French doors or sliding doors that open on.
Right, but they're downstairs.
So, okay.
This applicant can't access that level in his house?
Eventually, he'll be in a wheelchair.
So,
and the steepness, I mean, it's really steep to go from the front door to the existing deck. I mean, that's really downhill.
I guess it's hard to judge that from the picture. It doesn't look that steep from the picture, but I guess we don't have the right angle. Ms. Malice, were you gonna?
I was just going to have a slightly different line of questioning than this, if you want. In your statement of justification, you indicate that your client is disabled, and I'm very sorry that that is the case. You state that he's disabled, and then you've attached medical records that detail his medical condition. But you really haven't described what the disability is. I know it's for us to judge what is needed is to kind of understand what the actual disability is, because
what I was told was that he has a treatable but uncurable cancer, and that eventually he won't be able to move and he'll be in a wheelchair. And what he's done.
So just so to stop there, but does he currently today have a disability?
Right now he doesn't, but he will. And he's trying to prepare his property for when that time comes. And what this letter says is that he needs regular exercise, adequate amounts of vitamin D, and that this disease will weaken his bones and increase the risk of a fracture. And the time will come when he must stay in a wheelchair.
Yeah, so that's a little difficult for me, is that there's no current disability. We could all anticipate a disability. So that's just something that I noted in your explanation of how we ought to approach this, is that, we identify that there's a disability is the first thing. And then we talk about hardship and then what's reasonable. And so I wanted to understand that there is no disability today.
Well, I think there is. I think he has to be very careful, but he is able to walk currently.
Is he employed?
I'm sorry?
Is he employed?
No.
Okay, well, that just, I appreciate that clarification.
Yeah, I mean, he regraded his yard, he put in curb and gutter, and improved it, put in a sidewalk for the time that he thinks will be soon when he'll be in a wheelchair.
But in addition to building the upper deck, which you said he needs because it's hard for him to get to the lower deck, he also wants to expand the lower deck, correct? That's part of the application.
No, I don't think so.
I think it's both.
That was my interpretation, because if we look at the elevations, the bottom deck is identical to the top deck, which looks bigger than the current deck.
Okay, you're on the elevations.
I'm trying to find them now, but I'm going off my recollection from when I reviewed this case. Right, I'm not seeing the pictures because I'm having trouble with the posting, but my recollection is that The encroachment is the same for the bottom and the top.
You know, you're right. He is squaring off the lower deck according to this. I had not realized that that was part of it. I don't think that's important to him, to be honest.
Question for staff, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Ms. Malice.
So how do we think about patios and measuring that 8 inches when there's grade on the property?
We'd have to look at the patio to see if it was constructed. If it was 8 inches or higher, then it would count towards lot coverage.
So I know when we measure building height, we take averages to figure out, if the building is at grade, we take averages to figure out what the correct building height is. There's no such calculation done on a patio on a sloped property.
I think typically when we look at patios, we kind of look at them similar to decks. Like if one point is higher than 8 inches or higher above grade, then we would look at it as counting towards lot coverage.
Okay, so you really don't make any allowances for grade on a patio?
Yeah, that's where it would be kind of if it's 8 inches or greater, it would count towards the total lot coverage.
There's no averaging of grade or anything. Okay.
We have 2 speakers. Why don't we hear from the speakers and then we can come back because I have thoughts.
Okay.
But I don't want to prolong the speakers. Mr. Hughes.
Thank you for having me. I own the property at 1038.
Can you either raise the podium up or speak into the mic?
I think that might be.
Okay, yeah, so I live at 1038 22nd Street South. So it's directly downhill from the property in question. And
It's adjacent behind.
yes, it is
Okay.
adjacent. So
Thank
I live on the corner of Kent and 22nd Street. And this property is at the corner of Kent and 23rd.
So you're at 1038?
Yes,
Okay.
Takes us all a minute to get there.
yeah.
Go ahead.
Okay, so we have had significant issues with water in our backyard. We have put tens of thousands of dollars of drainage in our backyard, and it hasn't fully dealt with dried out the yard. We have had issues where water has caused problems with our foundation, and we have had to add some pumps to our house in order to help alleviate the water. Our contractor who did this said there's not much more that we can do on our property in order to alleviate the water issues we have. So our concern, the reason we would like you not to approve it, is because what he would be doing is there already, I get the terms wrong, but there are already more coverage on the lot than is normally approved. This would add to that, and it is a deck, but it would still make it so there would be, of our understanding, more runoff of water, which could lead to issues with erosion, clogging up the drains we have, and also just more water running off as opposed to being soaked into the ground in general, which could lead to problems with our yard that we have already dealt with in the past. And there's been no issues with the application or anything where they have done anything to address or state how this situation will affect runoff and our property. That's our concern.
Thank you. Do my colleagues have questions for this speaker?
I heard the Mr. Lawson mention that the homeowner here had been doing some grading or changing some work in his yard. Is that when you started to see the drainage problems?
I don't know specifically what he's referring to. There were, so in the statement that we submitted, we kind of outlined it, but we bought the property in 2017. We put in drainage after that. And which helped. And after that, he did add some drainage to his property because he had similar issues at the bottom of his. So you can see kind of both of us at different parts. You can see it more on his and one of the pictures where there's rocks on the bottom. Both of us have put those in to try as a way to help drain water out of the property.
Thank you. Is Mr. Cox online?
Yes, sir, I am. And thanks for everybody's time, learning a lot here. And I do appreciate the opportunity to speak. And I agree with, Chris. I live at 1035 23rd Street South, which is on page 12 of the variance request that you guys have, which depicts my property location. Bottom line, I'm on 23rd Street, directly east of Elias's and Leanne's home. I'm only present just to provide my support of his modification to the property. The proposal makes sense, and ma'am, to your question about is he disabled now, I believe he's 100% disabled in accordance with the Veteran Affairs and all that stuff from his service in the U.S. Army. And given his medical challenges now to maintain a high quality of life, given his current medical condition and likelihood that it's a debilitating disease that affects his blood, what he's proposing, will not really affect the wonderful environment of the area. To Chris's point, yes, there's, I'm directly east. There's an awful lot of water in my backyard every day, but Elias's property there is, I can't call that a direct contributor. The contour intervals of the terrain, it's just the way it is. So I do not believe that the proposal is going to really increase or decrease the water flow at all. That I'm not a scientist or a topography expert. However, I just wanted to pop on to say, he's got my support for it. And that's really all I've got to say, pending any questions you have.
Thank you. Discussion or more questions for Mr. Lawson?
I guess just for us. So I'm looking at page 55. That's the existing deck is being improved according to this. The one that Mr. Lawson says he can't use.
Yes, I think that's right.
Yeah.
All right, and then
I'm sorry, can I ask a related question before
Sure.
you? Mr. Lawson,
Yes,
where does this applicant reside in the house?
I'm sorry,
Where does this applicant reside in the house?
on the upper level.
So he can access the upper level, but not the basement level.
He can, on the same level as the front door.
He resides on the same level as the front door.
Yeah,
Okay, on that,
Uh-huh.
on the floor plan, on first floor, there's no bedroom there on the proposed first floor plan.
I've got so many pages, I'm looking for it, for the drawing.
It's page 51.
51.
Yeah, my understanding is that there will be a bedroom on that level.
And there's no full bathroom on that level either.
No, but that will be added.
So what are the, what's the relevance? Are these not the plans that we're supposed to be looking at?
So I feel that this application might be premature, right? Because this applicant is proposing a two-story deck on the premise that the first story isn't good enough for a speculative or future disability, maybe not speculative, but future disability, when the alterations to the interior of the house don't appear to have been done yet, but we're moving forward with the exterior alterations of the house, which need a variance from this board. But the alterations inside the house, which don't need a variance from this board, haven't been undertaken yet.
But could I defer this case? If you're inclined to not grant this, I would ask to defer it so that he can be here. Because I think he can, when we got the favorable staff report, he went ahead and went out of town. And we didn't realize that we were going to have opposition until today. And I think he can come here and probably better answer a number of your questions.
I think that actually is a good plan because I do have a concern that we're increasing the coverage to have these two much bigger decks when it seems like two might not be appropriate. And it may be structurally you have to have two for one to support the upper one. But I think that's a good idea. And I would move to defer item V12008-24- sorry, I got the wrong for me. No, dash VA-2. Is that the right?
Can we defer the use permit and both of them at the same time?
Yes. So
And the use permit.
And the use permit?
yeah, the use permit.
Is it-
So I'll make my motion again. I'll restate it
All right, thank you.
completely. I would move that the Board of Zoning Appeals defer both items V12008-24-VA-2 and item V-12009-24-UP-1 to the February 19th, 2025 meeting of the Board of Zoning Appeals, if the applicant thinks they can be ready for that.
I think so.
And is that, staff, will that work for you all to do
You
advertising?
have to second your motion.
Okay. Well, I would change the motion if staff can't do it for then, but does that work?
Yeah, that works for us.
Okay.
I'll second the motion,
A motion,
but I'd
Mr.
like,
Chairman,
Ms. Freshman.
just for the record, having listened to what's been going on, it's not unusual for us to have cases where people make changes to their dwellings in anticipation of aging in place. I find that it's persuasive that there be some exterior changes in anticipation of an existing disability, which will be worse. So I'm just saying that is because I would have supported the project, but and I understand the reasons for deferral, but I don't think it's sending the right message if we say that we want to wait until someone is wheelchair bound before they can make that sort of an exterior adjustment. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Freshman.
And could I just weigh in for 1 minute? I would also think, and this is more just for consideration of as we bring this back, that the link between what the disability and the need for this improvement will be important to the BZA's consideration in the future.
and I'd like to add one more
Ms.
element to that.
Malice.
I think in this interval, it would be important for you or your client to meet with your neighbor.
Mhm.
You said that you have a condition that might alleviate some of his concerns. It would be good if you would share that with him and see if that would satisfy his concerns, and also flesh it out for us in terms of what that would mean and whether that's something that zoning staff can enforce.
Okay, thank you. So if I have this right, a motion for deferral to our February scheduled hearing date. Motion made by Ms. McCroskey, seconded by Ms. Malice. Did you second, Ms. Malice?
Yes.
Is there any further discussion? I will call the roll. Ms. Malice?
Aye.
Ms. Freshman?
Aye.
Ms. Clark?
Aye.
Ms. McCroskey?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Motion for deferral passes 5-0.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman,
Ms. Malice?
on the next item that will be called item number 9, I am recusing myself on that item. I have a acquaintance with the applicant, and I think it's better that I not participate.
Thank you, Ms. Malice.
So I'm going to leave.
We will note that in our minutes. Ms. Ryan, can you call the skipping the use permit, the next item after that use
Yes.
permit?
Case number V-12010-24-UP-2, a use permit request by Vladimir Kudla on behalf of Richard Dooley and Lisa Lemire. The owners to permit a street setback of 19 feet to the porch instead of 21 feet to the porch as required, and to permit a street setback of 16 feet to the stairs instead of 25 feet to the stairs as required regarding a front porch addition with stairs exceeding 35% of the width of the building elevation to an existing one-family detached dwelling in the R6 zoning district on the premises known as 365 North Granada Street in Arlington Forest. Staff recommends that the board adopt the attached proposed resolution granting the use permit request with conditions.
Thank you, Ms. Ryan. Do we have questions for staff? The applicant is here. Would you like to speak to your application?
All right, thanks. We act on behalf of our customers, and the reason for that porch extension, little extension forward, because the whole neighborhood and the street and following streets, they all basically have those porches, and they looking really nice and beautiful. And we have extension only 1.5 foot. So that's a 6 feet wide porch, which is totally reasonable for ergonomic reasons, because 4 feet would be too small. And the house condition now is pretty kind of outdated, and there's no porches there, there's nothing there. And it's very, very, let's say, looking not good house. And it's probably only one house in that neighborhood which just looks like that. So it's time to lift face up and bring them to the condition. Because again, 4 feet would be too small for the porch, and plenty of houses in that street probably has the same resolution of that. So that's pretty much it.
Thank you. Do we have questions for this applicant? In discussion with the board?
I
Ms.
have,
McCroskey?
yeah, in particular, we have a situation here where the resolution reflects an additional 6 inches for possible errors, and I don't agree with doing that on a fairly consistent basis. I understand a lot of people ask for that, but I would oppose doing that because that just means the rules are different. And the other thing is, this is again an issue that comes up regularly. Everybody wants a 6-foot porch, and I understand that's what everybody wants. The ordinance consistently says 4 feet, so the board has been generally approving those. I've been voting no, and I'll probably be consistent with my approach, which is that the zoning policy is a 4-foot porch. And so I will probably vote to oppose that change.
Thank you, Ms. McCroskey. I'm reviewing. Does anyone have anything else?
Guess I wasn't as clear on the 6 inches, if that was for the error with the construction or.
The, um, yes, I think if you compare the drawings to the amounts that are set forth in the resolution, the resolution allows for 19 feet and 16 feet. I'd have to look back, but I think the resolution numbers are different from what's actually on the drawings because they incorporate the 6 additional inches of encroachment.
But when the porch was requested in 2022, it didn't include the 6 inches. Right? Or, so they're just asking for that now.
I think that's correct. I believe,
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, that was it wasn't built at that time,
Okay.
right? Yeah.
Just a quick brief comment from my colleagues to see if I elicit any reactions. One of the items that we have to do is we have to judge compatibility with the neighborhood. And here, I think that we can find compatibility with the next closest thing is 400 feet away, but it's only a block behind the applicant, maybe 2 houses behind. There's not a ton of comparables, but I guess the part that I'm kind of wondering is opinions of my colleagues is that this is a house that is requesting a 35% above the width, wider stairs, over 35% of the front of the building. Are we to judge compatibility of whether that's existing in other places in the neighborhood or not? Right, because that's requiring our use permit. And so, if we can find compatibility with the actual setback, what about compatibility with the width, which we don't have any evidence to judge preponderance of the evidence standard on that. So is that something that is that a finding we would need to make? Because I'm not sure I would be comfortable doing that if that's kind of what we have to do.
But isn't the 35% of width is something that affects the amount of the setback, but it's not something we are approving. That's part of the project that they have set. We're going to do it that way.
Well, if that's not something we have to approve, then why is that in the summary of the request? Right? Why wouldn't that just say, and maybe staff can speak to that.
I think that.
Right. Wouldn't it just say, and front porch with stairs? Why exceeding 35%?
Because the exceeding 35% affects what the applicable setback is, I believe.
Mr. Rissy, maybe you're best to speak to that.
I could be wrong, sorry.
Anyone, I mean, I don't mean to call it Mr. Rissy specifically, anyone who wants to speak to that. Is that a specific thing in the zoning code that we have to grant an exception to for a use permit to?
It's requiring that setback because it is more than 35% the width of the building. So it's requiring the same setback that it would the actual building itself compared to other steps, kind of like the ones we've seen in the prior case.
So if the width of these stairs were less than 35%, they wouldn't be here?
That's correct.
See that, and that's the trouble I'm having for compatibility, right? So I don't have a way to judge compatibility for stairs that are wider than 35%.
But I don't think I think if there were lots of houses that had those very wide stairs and the same setback, it might be that we might be considering them for compatibility.
Right. That's my
but
point.
Here, if there's nothing to compare it to, then I think that informs what you find out about compatibility.
That's my problem, right? That's what I'm getting at.
But we wouldn't be saying 35% width is prohibited.
No.
Because it just affects what your setback.
I'm just saying I'm having trouble. We have to make a finding that this is compatible with the neighborhood.
Right.
But there has been no evidence presented that 35 stairs exceeding 35% width are compatible in the neighborhood.
Mhm.
Right. We just don't have any evidence of that in front of us. So we can't make a preponderance of the evidence determination here. And I don't know what this board approved. You know, I guess it's not really relevant what we approved in 2022 that was never built.
Right.
I don't know if it was the same plan or a different, I'm not sure it matters. And so that was kind of what I wanted to throw out to my colleagues, to see if anyone else wanted to kind of change my mind on that. So I don't know exactly where everyone is. But I'm not sure I could support this because, like I said, I don't have any way to judge that the preponderance of the preponderance of the evidence standard has not been met by this applicant for me to build stairs wider than 35 feet into this setback. And so I don't know how my colleagues, I could be alone on that. I don't know, but I don't know if the applicant wants.
Though it stated there was a map showing several homes that had the porches with or wider porches, but I didn't see a map.
Right. It did not say they had the steps that were so wide, but they had porches, yes.
Right.
Although nothing says they're 6-foot porches.
Okay,
They
yeah,
may
it
be
just
the
said
4-foot ones that are allowed. I don't know. That's not
Right.
within, that information isn't.
May I add something?
before us. Yes.
And so the width of the steps, technically speaking, it's not the super issue. We definitely could make it 6 feet. That's fine. That's only reason we did it for inviting people, because the porch itself not so big, and those steps could be kind of seating space when there's some kind of party or visiting happening. It's only for that reason. So to decrease that to 6 feet wide, that's no problem at all. No problem.
Then you wouldn't need any approval if you decrease them to less than 35% of the front. Then you wouldn't need our approval.
The porch would still, because the
porch.
Oh, I thought I asked that question and
Porch is 1.5 foot.
Sorry, I thought I asked that. I must have misinterpreted an answer to a
That's
question.
not the issue at all.
Right. But, right.
It could be some kind of restriction or not restriction, suggestion to 6 feet. It's not questionable at all.
Right. Okay.
Because I'm sorry, again, the last one.
No,
Because
fine.
6 feet wide, we definitely saw plenty of houses in that street, which is really have pretty much the same as member of board mentioned. That's true. But again, no problem at all for 6 feet.
Yeah, so I if we drop the 35% waiver, without, unless the applicant can provide comparables of the 35%, I would approve that without the 35%.
Right. So I'm venturing to say what I'm hearing from everybody. And I think what we have is we only have 4 people to vote tonight. We have, because Ms. Malice has recused herself. And I think we have 2 people who are probably not inclined to approve this application. And so I'm going to suggest that if the applicant was willing, we would defer this item to the next meeting or to our meeting in February, which would give enough time for a revision. And really the standard for those steps, it's 35% of the width of the house. So doesn't have to go down to 6 feet, but it would probably have to go down to some degree. I don't know what that number would be.
I'm sure staff will assist.
Right, and staff could assist with that, but we could tonight defer this item, and then you could come back with a slightly revised proposal and have a good chance, a better chance, which we can't promise, of getting approved. So we could move to defer that, and if we could, or we can go ahead and take our vote tonight on this item.
Well, it would be great if you put some 35% restriction. We'll be perfectly fine with that, not to delay for another month, because those people are living not really good condition. And well, it's up to you, but we have no problem with that at all, to bring back less than 35%. It's not even an issue. We'll be very happy if you could move it forward.
I don't
Mr.
know.
Chair,
Ms. Freshman?
yeah, the point here, I think there's a slight disconnect, but I think that redesigning plans on the fly is not what we do. So I think even though the applicant is willing to narrow the stairs, that can't be done just on a cocktail napkin. So I think the best solution is to come up with the staff's help, come up with a revised plan for the February meeting that actually meets most of the criteria for most of the board members and has a better chance of being approved, but it's not going to be just saying, well, we'll make a little change here and there and let's go ahead. So just so the applicant is clear about why there is a deferral.
Ms. McCroskey?
Yeah, so I move that the Board of Zoning Appeals defer item use permit V12010-24-UP-2 to the Board of Zoning Appeals meeting of February 19th, 2025. And that's,
I'll second.
A motion by, for deferral to February BZA hearing made by Ms. McCroskey, seconded by Ms. Clark. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call the roll. Ms. Malice recused. Ms. Freshman?
Aye.
Ms. Clark?
Aye.
Ms. McCroskey?
aye.
Chair votes aye. Motion for deferral to February passes 4-0.
And I was just going to remind, and if you all work with staff to make sure that the concerns are addressed, that'll help when it comes back. Sorry.
Thank you. Sorry, not the result you want, but we will move forward. We have lost our quorum.
Okay.
Let me see if I can.
No, we have.
Ms. Malice is back. Okay.
Okay. Have a quorum.
We have a quorum. Ms. Ryan, can you call the next case?
Yes, case number V-12011-24-UP-2, a use permit request by David Kaiser on behalf of Aya Mueller and Wayne Chen, the owners, to permit a separation of 4.5 feet between a main building and accessory building instead of 8 feet between buildings as required regarding a reapplication of lapsed BZA approval B-11895-23-UP1 granted in 2023 for an accessory building to an existing one-family detached dwelling in the R27 zoning district on the premises known as 1911 South Lorton Street in Greenville. Staff recommends that the board adopt the attached proposed resolution granting use permit request with conditions.
Thank you. I remember this case.
Do you?
I do. Because it's a very, we made you go back and defer it last time for inches. So I remember this. Do my colleagues have questions for staff? I was much newer then, so I didn't know what I was doing. Would you like to speak to your application?
I can. I just want to thank staff for their help kind of bringing this back, hopefully expediting it to get it on an agenda as quickly as possible. And I want to apologize for taking up your time twice with this same case, obviously here a year ago. Just a little explanation as to why you're seeing this again. The homeowners whom I represent, have a young family. They wanted to use their backyard space when it looked like the construction was going to go into the spring, summer, fall timeframe. They elected to kind of push the plans a little bit. And when we restarted conversations, we realized that it was going to be very close to the 1-year anniversary. So instead of try and make it, if we didn't make it in time, we would have had to go on a later agenda for a later meeting. We kind of preemptively put it back in front for effectively a renewal and a reconsideration. And that's why we're here today. The application is the same as the one that you saw a year ago.
Thank you. Questions for this applicant? Discussion or a motion?
Mr. Chairman,
Ms. Malice.
I would be happy to make a motion. I move that the Board of Zoning Appeals approve the attached proposed resolution granting the use permit V-12011-24-UP-2, subject to the conditions listed.
Thank you, Ms. Malice.
Second.
A motion for approval as advertised by Ms. Malice, seconded by Ms. Freshman. Is there any further discussion? I will call the roll. Ms. Malice.
Aye.
Ms. Freshman.
Aye.
Ms. Clark.
Aye.
Ms. McCroskey.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Motion passes 5-0.
Thank you very
Let's
much.
do it this time. All right. Last case, Ms. Ryan.
Case number V-12012-24-VA-1, a variance request by Tanika Feldler on behalf of Gregory and Tyranny Fairchild, the owners, to permit a total lot coverage of 67.1% instead of 56% as allowed for a townhome regarding a new second-story deck addition to an existing townhome in the RA 615 zoning district on the premises known as 1610 Key Boulevard, North Roslyn. Staff recommends that the board adopt the attached proposed resolution denying the variance request. An alternative resolution has been provided should the BZA see fit to approve the variance request as advertised. Note, there is supplemental material for this that came in after the application, and its photos provided by the applicant.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Ryan. Questions for staff? None. Applicant. Mr. Fairchild, come on down.
Residents. There are no homes behind the residence. It is a unit of 6 townhomes. It is not an HOA. I have distributed all the way back on November 19th paperwork to all of the homeowners, informed them that this was going to happen. Additionally, I have subsequently on December 5th provided them a memo with the announcement that you all have about this event. I'd also shared with them the full renderings from the architect's plans. I'd also shared with them the email addresses of how to reach me and my family. Likewise, I've been asked by Ms. Petricini, very helpful, by the way, to consult my neighbors. That was a little difficult in 2 ways. My direct neighbor at Unit 1608 lives in Ireland. They are the Mead sisters. I asked the staff whether they had email addresses for the Mead sisters in Ireland. I've met them when they came from Ireland. They have current renters who I gave the full set of materials to, along with email addresses that they could contact if they needed to. I've heard nothing from them. I did, however, under Ms. Petrocini's suggestion, get Sandy Rex, Alexander Rex of 1610, to give me a note. I have 6 copies here for you today.
Thank you.
I'm sorry?
I said, thank you. Do you have?
I have nothing else to add.
Are you familiar with the state of Virginia requirements for a variance?
I'm not, but I don't do a lot of this, so no.
So the state code of Virginia requires this board to make several findings, one of which is hardship in order for us to grant a coverage variance.
Sure.
Is there a hardship on this property that would require a variance?
I'm not sure what the phrase hardship means in this context, but having heard people talk about being disabled in various ways, no, there's no disability here. This is a 4-foot deck. It's an extension to the second floor of the residence. It allows us to step out to enter through a pair of French doors onto a very small deck. It does not impede view from either side, nor does it impede sun. And again, I have a letter from the resident immediately next door. Now, I don't know if that meets the question, if that answers the question you're talking about. There's no medical reason if that's what you're asking.
I mean, a hardship can be grading of the property or some kind of property-specific hardship, that what you're trying to do would overcome that hardship. And a second finding that this board has to make is that the county board, the reason for your request is not so generally reoccurring that the county board couldn't solve it with an ordinance, right? So in this example, the county board, if they deemed it worthy, could increase lot coverage to your 67% from the 56%, right? And so what makes this different than the surrounding?
Oh, the
neighborhood?
applicant is online. She has her hand raised, so she might want to add to it.
Thank you, Ms. Ryan.
Good afternoon. Can you hear me?
Yep, good afternoon.
Okay, I'm sorry, good evening. My name is Tanika Felder. I am the architect working with the Fairchilds on the deck design. They have a unique situation in their rear yard. There is, and all of the neighbors have a fence that goes along their rear yard that only gives them about 16 feet of the use of their rear yard. And that's because there is a private easement that runs along the rear of the entire group of 6 townhouses. And so that takes away about 13 feet of usable outdoor space for the homeowners. So that's why they're requesting the variance for the deck to be able to allow just a little bit more usable outdoor space for them. As you can see on the site plan, the gate that you can see there on the site plan is about 16 feet from the rear building wall. And then the rest of that area is in dealing with the private easement that's in the rear of the yard, which doesn't have anything except for grass, and it's a concrete wall that backs up to a tennis court for a high-rise building behind it. So that's the difficulty that they have with this site.
Thank you, Ms. Felder. Do my colleagues have anything further for the applicant? Discussion with the board?
Sorry, can I go back to what the architect was saying? So the easement is where, looking at, can you see the drawing that's up before us now?
Yes, I can see it.
Okay, so the easement, is that what's outlined in blue?
Correct, in that light aqua blue.
Right, okay. And so how does that create a situation where we need to put in this deck? This is what I don't understand.
Right.
So the fence that's there, it bisects the rear yard. So it has the usable area for the homeowner, and on the other side of that fence, it's a grassed area for the easement for the stormwater management facilities, which is not used by any of the existing homeowners. And so that's why we're requesting the additional space for the deck, because we lose that space in the back where that easement is located.
Okay, it's just you want to sort of replace, by building the deck, you want to make other space useful since that back space is not useful. Is that sort of what you're saying?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
But is that backspace, Ms. Malice, go ahead.
All right, Mr. Chairman, question for staff. So this is a coverage issue, right?
That's correct.
Coverage. So what part of this lot is included in the coverage calculation?
It's going to be the entire lot. So if Brett can scroll down a little bit, that's also going to include the coverage of
So even if there was no easement there, they would be over, because the easement part is included in the coverage.
Yeah, the pavement and area used for driveway.
Do we have pictures of that rear?
I don't understand how Miss Fetter's justification, if the easement area and the whole lot is considered part of the lot coverage.
Yeah.
Even if there was no easement there, you would be over.
Yeah, that's an existing condition that's there, that we're over, because the lot coverage, I believe, is 56%. and the existing building is at 60%, a little over 60%.
And on the other side of the fence, which from the pictures in the supplemental, is it just a grassy area on the other side of the fence?
It's a grassy area on the other side of the fence.
That fence can come down and you have access to a grassy area.
Mr. Fairchild has to speak to that. I don't know if they have access to that area.
We do have access to the area. You can walk behind that fence. I'd rather not do that. It would mean our fence would extend very differently than any of the other fences that are there. They all actually terminate at the same place.
I don't.
I thought you had some.
Yeah.
No.
Are we at?
We're at discussion,
Discussion.
or if someone wants to try a motion.
Oh, I will just say, I don't see how this application meets the standards given to us by the Virginia Code to approve a variance. The fact is, it's the house that takes up the coverage area, and there's just no reason this couldn't be done by a general ordinance, and there isn't any unreasonable restriction on the use of the property.
At some point, I'd love a translation of that if I'm allowed to ask for that. I just don't know really what you're talking about. I think you tried, Mr. Kaplan, to explain, but since I'm not really versed on.
Have you read the staff report?
I have it here, actually.
Right. So on page.
Sure.
Starting on staff analysis on page 2, items 1 and 2 directly address the issue.
Okay. I'm looking at the staff analysis, and you're right.
3. 1, 2, and 3.
Strict application of the terms of the ordinance unreasonably restrict the utilization of the property. Is that what you're specifically referring to?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, items 1, according to Virginia law code, you can meet the standard with either using number 1 in the staff report or number 2 in the staff report.
I see.
Or number 3 in the staff report.
Okay. And so.
And we're required by law to make one of those findings in order to approve this case.
So then the likelihood of this occurring from the get-go was ill fait accompli? This was not going to happen anyway?
Well,
I'm just trying to understand, as a homeowner who was simply just adding a small deck, I'm trying to understand if I'm here and trying to get approval to add a small deck to my house, if what you're telling me is that the conditions necessary for me to do that weren't ones that would have ever been met anyway.
Not by your application.
So then that's helpful for me to understand.
Well, and that's why staff has recommended the denial in this case.
I see. So then, in essence, the answer is the following, that if a homeowner wants to add a deck to their home, and again, it's not encroaching on anyone else, and the neighbors have said that they're fine with it, I just want to make sure I understand the way the policy works.
Well,
because your hands are
we don't
tied.
do so this board is not policy. The county board has done policy.
I see.
Right. We're a board created by state statute, which has the power to grant variances of county policy if we're able to make the findings as the staff report outlines.
I see.
And it depends in each case on the total circumstances.
Right.
So in other words, suppose your house was quite a bit smaller, then you might be able to add a deck on the back. But as it currently is, it's taking up most of the coverage that the ordinance allows.
So
And
it's
so
certainly,
expanding is not easy for you.
so I did see the narrowness reflection in the document, if that's what you're referring to, that it's not narrow and doesn't have that, it's not narrow in that way. I just am simply trying to understand a more basic thing, and I think you're making it plain. am I allowed, if I'd like, to add a deck to my home if it doesn't encroach on someone else? And what I think I'm hearing is no.
Well,
In,
that's not correct because the question of whether it encroaches on someone else is not the question.
I see.
The question is, we have to find to approve a variance that the ordinance creates an unreasonable restriction on the use of your property
Got it.
and that the granting of the variance would alleviate a hardship due to the physical condition relating to the property. And we would also have to find that the no ordinance of general application to all properties could change this. And in this case, the ordinance sets a coverage limit that your deck would cause your property to exceed, and that could be changed by a general application of the ordinance to the property. So that's why in each case, you have to look at a lot of the details.
That part I appreciate, and I appreciate everyone's time. What I just fail still to understand, and obviously I don't think I'm going to get a good answer, is that it's an aesthetic improvement, and that's all it is. I thought when I buy a home, I'm allowed to do an aesthetic improvement.
I'm losing.
That's all this was an aesthetic request to a change to my home. So it's a new home. I bought it new to me. I bought it a year ago, and I just wanted to add a small deck to the back. But if that is just something I can't do, even if it doesn't, my house isn't too narrow or small, or I have to seek some redress to get that done. If that's what the answer is, I understand.
So, Mr. Chairman,
Ms. Mellis.
where are we in the process? Have we made a motion?
No, we have not made a motion.
I think we're due for a motion.
I think we are due for a motion.
I may have overstayed my welcome.
No, we're just trying to.
I'm just trying to understand as a homeowner and a resident.
So the
And that
county,
was all I was trying to do.
so your redress is with the county board. The county board has issued an ordinance that does not allow you to do what you want to do, and they're the sole body who could change that rule.
Mr. Kaplan, I appreciate you explaining that to me. And I'm sorry that I've tarried in some way by trying to understand.
No,
the
no need to
policy.
apologize.
If I in any way had anyone feel that we should move on, I'm really sorry.
Not at
about
all.
that.
No,
You
no.
stayed here all night. I've sat through all of
No
your-
need to apologize.
Well, I would hope I wouldn't as a homeowner have to apologize. But I don't know these policies. I'm not read in on these policies. Tanika is there to help with those things. But I'm just a man who owned a home and was just trying to do something at my home. And I appreciate your explanation. Thanks very much for your time.
Thank you.
So I'll make a motion.
Ms. McCroskey.
I move that the Board of Zoning of Appeals adopt the attached proposed resolution denying variance V 12012-24-VA-1.
Second,
A motion by Ms. McCroskey, seconded by Ms. Freshman. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call the roll. Ms. Malice,
Aye.
Ms. Freshman,
aye.
Ms. Clark,
Aye.
Ms. McCroskey.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Motion for denial passes 5-0. I know it's not the result you wanted, but our hands are tied under Virginia code. Sorry. Have a good night. We're going to try. We have some minutes to approve, which I think we have to unfortunately go through one by one because at least I think two of them have minor changes. For the minutes on September 18th, 2024, these minutes have Ms. McCroskey virtual, and we just have to note a reason why Ms. McCroskey was virtual.
That was the September 18th.
Because you were out of the jurisdiction.
I was, yes, I was on vacation in North Carolina.
So can I make a motion to approve the September 18th, 2024 minutes with an alteration noting that Ms. McCroskey was virtual because she was out of the jurisdiction? Is there a second?
Second.
A motion by the chair, seconded by Ms. Clark for approval of the minutes. Any discussion? Hearing none, I will call the roll. Ms. Malice,
Aye.
Ms. Freshman,
Aye.
Ms. Clark,
Aye.
Ms. McCroskey.
Aye.
Approval of the minutes from September 25th.
Did you vote?
Chair votes aye. Thank you. Motion passes 5-0. I'll motion for approval of the September 25th minutes with the same amendment that Ms. McCoskey was virtual because she was out of the jurisdiction. Is there a
Yes,
second?
And let me just say, I was in the Bahamas at that time. And because it is important, if you're on vacation, to say the location that you are at.
Oh,
If
okay.
it's a personal reason. For a medical reason, you don't need to say that.
I thought we just had to say that you're out of the jurisdiction. Do we need a specific location?
Yes, if it's
Okay.
for personal reasons. And it doesn't have to be detailed, but it has to be the location.
Okay, so I'll alter that to say that Ms. McCoskey was in the Bahamas. I was trying not to for privacy, but that's okay. Is there a second?
Second.
A motion for approval by the chair, seconded by Ms. Freshman for approval of the minutes with that one change. Any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call the roll. Ms. Malice,
Aye.
Ms. Freshman,
Aye.
Ms. Clark,
Aye.
Ms. McCoskey.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Motion for these minutes passes 5-0. Next is October 16th. I have no alterations. I don't know if anyone else does.
Move approval.
Second.
Approval by Ms. Freshman, seconded by Ms. Malice for the October 16th, 2024 minutes. Any further discussion? I will call the roll. Ms. Malice,
Aye.
Ms. Freshman,
Aye.
Ms. Clark,
Aye.
Ms. McCoskey.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Motion for approval of October 16 passes 5-0. October 17th. Anyone have any changes? Someone like to
Move
motion?
approval.
Second.
Approval of October 17th, 2024 made by Ms. Freshman, seconded by Ms. Malice. Any further discussion? We'll call the roll. Ms. Malice,
Aye.
Ms. Freshman,
Aye.
Ms. Clark,
Aye.
Ms. McCoskey.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Motion passes 5-0. November 13th minutes. Again, Ms. Clark was absent or Ms. Clark was virtual. Ms. Clark, do you recall why you were virtual?
Yeah, I was at a business conference in Richmond.
I'll motion approval of the Wednesday, November 13th, 2024 minutes with an amendment that Ms. Clark was virtual for a conference in Richmond. Out of
Move
the
approval.
jurisdiction.
Second.
Seconded by, motion made by the chair, seconded by Ms. McCoskey. Any further discussion? I will call the roll. Ms. Malice,
Aye.
Ms. Freshman,
Aye.
Ms. Clark,
Aye.
Ms. McCoskey.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Motion passes 5-0. I believe that is our business. All the agenda having been completed, this hearing is hereby adjourned. We'll see everyone in the new year.